Welcome back to Project Tug. On this week's episode, I'm going to be making a start on the superstructure of the ship. Now, after last week's episode where I basically attempted to do a load of new things without having any idea about how I was going to do it or any idea of how I was going to film it, this week's episode I've already gone off and had a good go at making a superstructure, so I can give you what I think is the best way to go about making one if you're attempting to scratch build the upper parts of an RC model boat. And hopefully with a few of my tips you might end up making a little less scrap than me. This was all my fails, every single blooming one of them. Luckily all of this will find a use in other parts of the ship, but I'm hoping by explaining how I went about it in the end to avoid you some of the same pains. I think I tried building 5 superstructures for this before I finally worked out a method. I've never done any of this sort of stuff before. I've built ships in the past but never scratch build, so it's all new for me and I hope it's useful to you, the viewer. Anyway, let's get on with it. Now the first thing you're going to want to do when it comes to building the superstructure is plan. Work out how big and how you're going to go about making it. I found these 1/24 scale images of a TID Tug on the internet. I've had them printed out into hard copies, but for the benefit of showing you people, it's easy to do this on the PC. I'm going to simplify the entire superstructure into 2 parts, 2 basic boxes. The front section here and the back section here. And then all of these other sections, cabin, forward cabin, and these little air vents and other bits, they're all going to be afterthoughts. I'm going to worry about them once I've got these 2 main chunks down. And even these, there's going to be a few recessed areas such as here and here that I'm simply going to cut into the boxes and pad out with balsa wood afterwards, or ply, depending on what's easier. So that's the first thing you want to do when you go about making your superstructure. Once you've decided how you're going to go about doing it, start measuring out the areas for the individual pieces. My forward deck is going to start down here and work its way back to here, and the rear deck is going to start there and work its way round to there, leaving a little bit exposed over the server, but I'm going to simply cover that with a little access hatch that will blend nicely down in between these 2 rudder chain guards or whatever they are. Once you know where the superstructure is going to be and how big it is, put a piece of wood up next to it to see what the line's like. As you can see, there's going to be a lot of gaps against that if I simply slap a right angle straight up against it. Now what I found is easier to do with these kind of parts is make the part a little bit bigger than the line it's supposed to fit and draw the right angle from top to bottom after you've marked out the line against the ship. For this, it's quite simple. I can't really show you with one hand on the camera and one hand on the plywood, but you should get the gist of it if you come to making one of these yourself. What I used, I think it's called a scribe line. People use it in carpentry. Bridge the gap between the piece by using a pen or a pencil, preferably a pencil. This is just quickly what I had to hand, on a block of wood that exceeds the gaps. Once you've got that, place the pen down just like when I was doing the sides of the deck and run along as flat as you can, and this will follow the curve of the ship and give you a nice marked outline. I've done this for a piece on the back just along here, and as you can see the gap. You can see where that raised up pen has given me a nice line that will match up to the ship. Once you've got that, cut it out. And as I said before, try using a bigger piece than you actually need, as you can't add what you've taken away, but you can take more off something if it's a little bit too big. Once you've got your piece cut out, check how it fits against the deck. If it's a good fit, grand, you got it the first time, but as you can see from this one, it's going to need a little bit of wood taken away at the front to get it to fit just a little bit more snug. Once you've done it for that end, do it for the near side. Once you've done it for the near side, exactly the same process, but for the end pieces. Haven't got a piece of scrap that'll fit, but there we go. Once you've got it all together, work out how high the box is going to be. With this one, the near side edge of the box I believe will be 4.5 centimeters, and it will be completely square across the top. So once I've got the measurement, it's simply a case of putting the right angle up against it and zipping straight down the side. Then copy that angle on the end pieces as well. Once you've got all your pieces cut out, glue them together. I found that using some of this square dowel along the seams really helps get the pieces have something better to glue onto rather than just the thin end pieces. And if you follow that, hopefully you'll end up getting something like this. This is the main superstructure of the forward part of this ship. Now, once you've got your main superstructure, all the other little bits and pieces, what you're going to want to do is simplify them. Cabin, I've split into two parts. This part here will be the main part of it all, and as you can see I've left a little recess in the side. That's because it's going to be planked up the side into the actual boathouse up here at the top, which is probably going to finish up about there. I've got the measurements written down on a piece of paper. And for other bits, like the forward cabins, simply another box again, and you can just glue them all together until you've got the entire piece. There's going to be a few bits on top here which are just going to be small boxes with a slope cut into them after they've been created to make the vent or whatever it is on the top there. And there's going to be a few areas like behind the cabin doors here where there's some ladders recessed into the actual superstructure. All I'm simply going to do with that is cut in and then pad it out from the back, just trying to make the job as easy as possible as I can. Now I'm going to get on with making the rest of the rear part of the superstructure, or the basic part of the superstructure, and I'll show you what I come up with when all that's done. Be right back. And that's 2 days later. You can tell now without a shadow of a doubt it's a TID tug. I've finished off the main boxes of the superstructure, cut in the recesses, and all the little gaps I've filled in with a little bit of wood filler. Unfortunately though, I'm at an odd stage in the build now, as I've got to wait for things to come in the post before I can carry on. I think in next week's episode I'm going to be building a few of the hatches and doors, but for that I'm going to need slightly thinner sheet wood, as the 2mm thick stuff would look really chunky. It would look really overscale. I want it to be a little bit raised and pronounced, but not 2mm, as it would look like armour plating on a tank. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good one.